So this week, George and I, once again, went to go see the big movie of the week, or last week, really, because that's when it came out. But we went to go and see DUNE. On Saturday, we went to go find the biggest IMAX cinema we could at the BFI and IMAX. We had a whole plan to do kind of what we did for No Time to Die, which was turn up like a good 45 minutes to an hour early, sit down, talk about, where we were coming into this. And it was just torrential rain, the heavens open.
Yep.
George calls me up, he's like, I'm not going to make it. We're not going to do a pre. I'm going to meet you basically going into the cinema. Scrap the plans for the pre. We're a mess. We go in, we see the film, we come out. It's a little bit grey and hazy. It kind of starts to rain, but I'm also a bit of a mess this week. I had brought the camera. I didn't bring the right cable to connect my microphone that would split two audio things into the cable. So then I go, okay, well, I'll just use this extra microphone I stick on the top of my camera to get pretty clean sound. Yeah. Obviously, I set it up, but I don't actually put that cable in to record the audio, and that's after I realized we've recorded our thoughts. So we did record our raw impressions of the movie DUNE. I'm sorry for there's a little bit of wind noise. It also sounds a little bit like there's a swarm of bees feasting on a carcass somewhere. But yeah, if for some reason you haven't been paying attention to this movie, this is DUNE. It's based on the novel written by Frank Herbert.
I'm not sure.
It's based on a novel by someone called Frank something.
Yeah.
It's directed by Denis Villeneuve, who most recently has directed Arrival, Blade Runner 2049,
Sicario,
Prisoners, Sicario. This film stars Timothy Chalamet, Oscar Isaac, Rebecca Ferguson, Stellan Skarsgård, Jason Momoa,
Josh Brolin.
I've done quite well.
Charlotte Rampling.
Yeah.
And Dave Bautista.
Dave Bautista, yes.
Nice.
We got there. Yes, so if we mention any of those, that's who we're talking about. This film was shot on IMAX, and I'm so glad we did see it on IMAX, but we'll get into the review. So here we go. You're about to hear...
Wait, no, I'm going to say something else for you guys.
Go for it.
Here's the gist.
Oh, yeah,
it's
the plot. Yeah, sorry.
It's a space epic set in... the year is like 10,971.
It's not the last duel.
How to summarize this film succinctly? Essentially, you live... it's set in a universe where there are great houses that rule across the galaxy.
It's a kind of Game of Thrones in space vibe to it.
Yeah, sure.
Almost.
So House Atreides is our hero's house, where Timothy Chalamet is the son, Oscar Isaac is the the main figure. They are tasked by the Emperor to consort and rule over Arrakis, this desert planet, which has a very valuable content called spice. It used to be occupied by the Harkonnens. And they are brutal people, but they disappeared. They left the planet. And there's intrigue and there's mystery. Cue lots of shots of space, lots of huge bits of
score.
Yeah, and lots of bits of machinery and grunting and groaning. Anyway, it's space, it's sci-fi, it's DUNE. You go big. We went big, went to the IMAX. Here's what we thought.
Okay, so George, we just came out for the screening of DUNE. We're back on our geography school trip. Close. We've thankfully found a time where it's not pouring with rain. We just went to go see DUNE. George, your raw thoughts, what do you think?
Okay, well, I had a really stressful journey getting here. Really, really stressful.
George was late. We weren't meant to do pre-thoughts.
I think one of the biggest compliments to the film I could say is I really do feel like I've been somewhere else. I really do feel like I've been in another universe and another place, which is great. It is spitting with rain. But I really think visually so striking, as with all of Denis Villeneuve's films. I thought when I was watching it, I was like, this is a bit like Blade Runner 2049. It's quite heavy, quite dense.
You can see the DNA in that so much.
But like that heavy density, I'm like, sometimes it's good, sometimes it doesn't work for me. So, but on the whole, I was like, oh, Jesus. And then also, I was like, I feel like I've watched the first half of a series, actually. There was a definite moment when I was watching it and I was like, and that would be the end of episode 1. And that would be the end of episode 2. So I think I've watched like 3 episodes.
Do you think it worked as a film?
I think for the most part, yeah. I think the third act is kind of actually climactically maybe slightly unbalanced with the way it ends, particularly with the events in the middle. But there are some really striking moments in there, and there's one particular moment of a confrontation, which I'll be able to talk more about, I think, later on. That I found like, oh god, yeah, this is really terrifying. Oh god, yeah, this is really exciting. Yeah. So you know what? I'm good. This is a lot to stew on. I'm really intrigued. I think we've seen something really new, and I felt like it was building like a new visual mythology. I need to stew on that one.
I think I really agree. That was definitely a really intense experience that I overall enjoyed. I totally think that I saw so many really cool things I've never seen before, or at least done in that way or presented in that way. We're talking about like a visual language that feels new and fresh. Still very much saw the DNA of Denis Villeneuve, Blade Runner 2049. But having gone in with no expectations for, well, I'd heard good things, but no expectations of what I thought Dune was. Hadn't read the book, hadn't looked into what the plot was. Really enjoyed just taking in this brand new world with eyes wide open. We saw it in the biggest screen we could find in IMAX, which I'm so glad we did. There were a couple of jaw drop moments where I was like, visually, I've not seen anything like that before.
You want every inch of your eyeballs to be immersed in this world, and that's what the IMAX gives you.
You'll definitely finish this going, okay, so that's definitely part one of a story. You can't ignore the fact that is a full stop midway through a story. If I'm thinking about the other films I've seen which have done that kind of hard stop, I think about the first one I went to go see Lord of the Rings, where it just fades out and you're like, okay, well, clearly there's
another adventure happening.
So almost feeling like I have a hard take on how good is Dune. I feel like I do want to see the second part and go, how does the story end? What does it go? So my main thought is like, really impressed, do it again.
Yeah, I think it was impressive. You definitely had its clear identity, clear vision of what it wanted to do. I think there's no moment in there where I thought, oh, that reminds me of something else. That, it clearly wanted to strike out on its own. And I think it's going to stick with me a while. But it's, it's a very heavy, immersive experience. It puts you under.
Really great performances. Again, like striking imagery. I thought Timothée Chalamet was good, maybe a little bit pouty if I was to criticise. Oscar Isaac.
The thing is about Timothée Chalamet is that he is meant to be playing like sort of kind of slightly bratish, slightly like moody teenage.
15 years old.
Okay, well, they didn't say that in the film, so I don't have to believe that. But he's going to be that sort of like adolescent, angsty, young, coming of age kind of person, and he kind of has that persona going into it. So the fact he's kind of, a little bit. I don't know. It kind of worked a little bit. I mean, I don't know how you get Timothée Chalamet's face from Oscar Isaac and Rebecca Ferguson, but sure, okay. I think on the whole, Oscar Isaac always sort of all the cast is not being rained on. Being rained on.
Those are all thoughts.
Those are all thoughts. Glad we saw it at the IMAX.
Yeah, oh god.
The weather is forcing us away. It's the dustiest film you'll ever see. It's like they just emptied a Hoover just after.
I was saying I got thirsty watching it.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing about how the water will be sapped from you by the environment they're in, and I was like,
right, I'm going to digest it though.
Yeah.
It's big. It's kind of made my head ring a little bit.
So going back to future George and James, who've had a few days to think about what they really think.
Tell us what you think, guys.
These were the raw opinions. Back to the studio. Thank you very much, past James and George, for handing it over to future James and George, or present now, time. George, it's been 3 days since you saw it. How do you feel now? What are you've had a chance to sit on it and really think about whether or not this film worked.
Okay. I think what you hear in that clip first is us really grappling with what we've seen, because to digest that film takes a good amount of time, which is good while we're giving this reaction now. I think I actually have slightly mixed views of Dune. I think on the whole, it's positive. But I am actually, it almost seems churlish not to be positive, because there is such an overwhelming grandeur and scale to this film that I respect and admire and love. But I think when watching it and going into it and experiencing it, I thought what I'm seeing is an A+ film. And I think actually what it is more of like a B+ film. And what I think is that despite its huge grandeur and its scale and its design, I think it's all slightly undone narratively by the fact that this film does not cohesively, satisfyingly conclude itself for it to function as its own film. And what I found is that when people said to me, what did you think of Dune? I think I actually feel like I've only seen half a film, because it is half a story. And it seems such a shame for a film that's over 2.5 hours long and it's so big that you feel like it's only covered a little bit of ground. Now, I know it's based on a hugely dense book and you've got to cover it. And believe me, I actually really appreciate...
We've both not read the book as well.
We've both not read the book, but I appreciate... I'm not saying they should have rushed it or fitted any, shoved any more in. I really respected the fact and felt that Denis Villeneuve was grabbing the audience by the hand and saying, look, this is different, this is new, this is not based on IP you're familiar with, but trust me, go with this, I'm going to give you all I can. And I really felt that and I really appreciated it. It's just that it doesn't conclude in a satisfying enough way. I feel like I've seen...
It's unignorable the way it ends.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen a play. I feel like I've seen the first act of a play and I'm currently in the interval. And someone says, what do you think of the play? And I'm like, I really can't give you an opinion, which is so strange because I sat in there for nearly 3 hours.
Yeah.
And, the third act is increasingly full of just teaser shots for the next film. And I found that so bizarre for a film that sets it up to be sort of a new franchise, and it wants to get itself away from like the MCU type of, we're going to tag this on to the next film, we're going to tag this on. The whole third act just felt like, as we talked about, this isn't really a spoiler. I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
Zendaya isn't really in this film. Her whole presence is, I'm in the next film.
She's in every other scene. She like links every scene,
Yeah.
doing lots of shallow depth of field, blurry, wispy hair,
Yeah.
focus pulse in the desert with the bright blue eyes. I sort of called on that she would turn up at the end and go, "Hi, it begins." And
Yeah.
that's not a spoiler. It's just part of the novel.
And I think that really the climax of this film is halfway through in a really brilliant sequence. When I mentioned in that clip, there's the scenes of confrontation, conflict, and attack. There's some really striking stuff there.
Yeah.
And then after that, it kind of shrinks and it becomes very bitty. And so, for example, Stellan Skarsgård, I loved in it, and he really plays this really grotesque, interesting character. They keep
sort of Jabba the Hutt meets
fat bastard from
Fat
Austin Powers.
That's exactly what
there's a scene where and they kept cutting away with it to another scene and cutting back, and I thought, just give me this now. Stop cutting and teasing ahead. So, but I also respect the film, and I don't want to be like churlish to say, oh, well, you've gone to all that trouble and you haven't satisfied me for that bit there. I do like it. I am impressed by it. I just wish it could function more as a film on its own instead of being... I mean, someone said to me that they didn't have a green light for part 2 until recently.
That's only
that
just been
astounds
confirmed.
me, and that actually
like
worries
last
me.
Week, that got confirmed.
But that worries me that they had this film in the can potentially to exist on its own. Yeah. And I thought that's, for me, the way that film is constructed, there's no way that film is ever going to work on its own. They were just gambling and saying...
I think that must be a byproduct of not knowing if the appetite for the big screen experience was back and whether or not people will take to Dune. But yeah, I'm glad to hear it.
Give me your thoughts, though.
Yeah, it's interesting picking up on what you said in your raw thoughts, where you said it felt like a slightly unbalanced experience where you felt like it was a bit front heavy. Because coming in to see a film called Dune with the kind of marketing it has and the cast it has and the premise, I kind of have to go, right, I really want to be told, what are the rules of this universe? What is the law? What is the politics? What is all of that? And I actually think it does a really good job of setting that up, and it has a good way of not doing too much voiceover. There's a little bit in the beginning, and the rest of it is all done by characters and scenes and tension, and you can tell the bad people are in the evil place and the good people are there. But picking up on what you've said about feeling like it is one half of a story, coming out of that, I had my raw impressions where I was like, this was brilliant and it was beautiful and it was a stunning movie to watch, and kept my eyes wide open. I was like, what is this about? What is this really about? And I almost have not been able to, I don't now want to over-intellectualize what I think Dune is about, because I think I'm halfway through. Yeah. So I want to go, what is the story? But I need to see how this ends. I need to see where the root of the characters are. You can very easily point to the clearly obvious tropes of colonialism, power, like people taking land from people who own it, and them being more part of the environment than they're not.
Also that idea of the young person having a calling, coming of age, fulfilling your destiny,
being told that they're special,
and
which
at
is
the center
like
of the universe,
basic premise of Harry Potter,
Star Wars, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings.
Someone turns up one day, a magic wizard says, you're actually, whether it's Hagrid, Gandalf, or any of them, says, you're actually special, and your whole life has been leading to this. It's like every nerd's fantasy. But yeah, so I almost have been like thinking, what do I think? What do I think about it? What's it about? And I don't have much of an answer because I've only been given part of the story. But I echo a lot of your sentiment.
And I think that's failing, really. Because you and I will go see part 2 because we love film.
Yeah,
right?
I'm curious.
But I would have liked for them not to have taken that for granted so much. I would have liked for them to have earned my appreciation, because we're not going to get that second part for another, 2 years?
Yeah, probably.
So
they've got to shoot it. They didn't shoot
I know, so that's a long time to wait for something. How skin deep is that appreciation for that film gonna last?
Just thinking about Denis Villeneuve's other films, if you think about Blade Runner 2049, which I really, really liked, and I thought it did a fantastic job of picking up where Blade Runner left off, there's some incredible scenes in that movie, And it does a really good job of not over-explaining to you exactly what every character's thinking at that exact time.
Yeah.
You get to like the 2/3 point in that film, building to this culmination when Kane and Deckard finally meet. And you have this amazing scene where not very much is said, but you can really tell that each actor is deeply staring into the other one, trying to figure out who they are, what they think, whether or not they're real, whether or not what's going on is happening. And that is why that scene is so intense. It's not because it relies on the dialogue, it relies on those little catching moments between two characters. And I sort of did see some of that in Dune. I liked that it wasn't overly throwing in your face why someone is important. You had some really good interactions between the actors. I thought Oscar Isaac did a really good job of having those knowing looks. I thought Rebecca Ferguson with Timothée Chalamet had some really good moments of locked tension. They have this way of communicating in Dune where they have this almost like a sort of sign language where they could, with the flick of a wrist and the movement of a finger, can convey really quick moments of information. I thought that's quite a cool way to not just throw loads of dialogue. Because you come into something like Dune with rules and planets and spice, and you're like, how wordy is this going to get? And I think I see that Denis Villeneuve style of show don't tell, which I like.
Yeah.
But again, where does that lead? What's the arc? They did even in Lord of the Rings. You usually had a third. You had a really clear third act for all of them, but then just trickled out.
Yeah, I mean, like,
This didn't have a third act.
let's say this is like the Fellowship of the Ring. You still have that final climax, the Boromir and stuff, and then. I mean,
there's a huge
another
arc
example
there.
is, I think, again, it feels almost mean to call it back to the thing it's trying to break away from. But let's take The Force Awakens, right?
Yeah.
That was the beginning of a new story. Now, regardless of where that trilogy went, but when that film ended, that had a satisfying conclusion. But you were like, oh my God, where is this story going to go? I'm so excited for all the directions this can be. For me, for Dune, I'm thinking, well, I guess you're gonna have to wait. Well, I'm gonna have to wait for you to tell me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think.
Like what was the rising tension that involved in a confrontation at the end that meant something? There was a slight, I don't want to spoil it, but there's some sort of alteration at the end, but I didn't really have much context for why that mattered, and I wasn't really on the edge of my seat wondering what was going to happen. The show stealers were the sandworms. Which are a whole other chat.
But the third act almost feels like part of the next film. That's my point. That's why it feels like the
I
said in that clip that it felt like the first 3 episodes of a series, and that's what I still feel that it's like I've seen something which hasn't got an ending. I've got the characters and I've built the world, but someone's hit pause. And I mean, look, you talked about, just to go back to Denis Villeneuve.
This might be the best tactic to get 2 cinema tickets out of an audience. You just go, well, you've got to see the other bit to see how it goes.
It's like the unlockable content for like video games. It's like, well, to unlock the rest of the story, you're going to have to come back in 2 years. I think that, Denis Villeneuve is a really visual filmmaker and visually striking. And, visually this is an absolute feast. And the sandworms. And, there were great moments in it that really, hook you in. And it's very bravura like that.
It's fantastic, like about a third of the way in sequence, which I was like, oh my God, let's go.
I think there is a thing with Denis Villeneuve about what I guess I'm going to call tonal oppression. And I found this a little bit with 2049, right? Which is, he is... The tone he creates in Dune is so oppressive and somber and dour that on one hand it's very skillful. I'm thinking, wow, I'm fully, I get what this guy is saying. It's a very clear message of the world that we're in.
It's world-class presentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Regardless.
But that's like that for 2 hours 30. And I have to say, there are some times I thought, I wouldn't have minded a bit of nuance. I wouldn't have minded a little bit of fun. I wouldn't have. I'm not looking.
Jason Momoa was there for.
I know. I'm not looking for Marvel quips. I'm just looking for slight emotional nuance.
Humanity, maybe.
Yeah, because do I really feel like I connected with any of those characters? No, because they were all oppressed and dour, like the setting was. Everything was.
It makes quite a big point to tell you are far from home.
Yeah, every character is there to establish the mood, and I just wish I'd had a bit more stickability, particularly because the film doesn't narratively satisfy me. A bit more stickability with the emotion, the fun of the film. So, yeah.
I think looking at Denis Villeneuve's last few films, I actually think he's upped the ante with a lot of them. He's got bigger and bigger. I do put him, and I know this isn't an interesting thing to say, and a lot of people have made the comparison, in the same category as Christopher Nolan, where it's storytelling on the biggest scale, but they're very much part of that idea that just because it's a big blockbuster, it doesn't mean it has to be done. And I think about when I first saw Arrival, I was like, I went in with literally no idea. I knew it was based on a short novel, but I had no idea what to expect. And there was so much more for me to chew on and analyze from when I came out of that film than before. And I was like, this is incredible. Who is this guy? I actually had seen Prisoners, but I didn't sort of connect the two. And then coming, from Blade Runner and you know, the pedigree, I was like, this is easily his biggest project, his biggest task. And I think we can sit here and be critical and go, that's half a story. It didn't feel like a cohesive whole. I wonder if he absolutely knows that, and he knows he's making 2 films, and maybe in 3 years' time we'll sit down and we'll go, oh God, what a 5-hour experience if you back to back these. And I do still, despite my hesitance of seeing half the story, have trust that I think it can be something really special.
Like I said to you at the beginning, I really did feel his strong hand on the whole thing. He had a strong grasp of, this is what I want to tell you. It is so different from what you're familiar with.
It's not lazy or slapdash with its intentions.
Focus, stay with me. I can't fit it all into this film, but come back. And I do respect that. And, you know, he probably knows that he can't fulfill every need. And you know what? I'm not saying that I needed those characters to be oozing warmth and laughter, but no, I think you're right. I think we're both on the same page, which is that we have slight... not even grumblings, but just reservations here and there, curious thoughts. But on the whole, we're on board. We just wish we could have the second half sooner. More of the pie.
And how many times have we, we've been given something really different. Again, don't know what the rest of it's going to look like. But how many times have you and I sat here speaking about how we think the template for Marvel has become a little bit too similar? And even going into the film, we can start to see the matrix of what they're trying to do. And we can kind of tell where it's going every single time. And it does descend into the same third act. I'm kind of going to give Dune a little bit of slack for not feeling like it needs to artificially conjure up some fake confrontation if it doesn't exist.
You're right. I think you're right. When we get to the end of this thing, we might look back and go, oh, that was the best thing they could have done. Because we don't know what's coming next.
No, we've not read it. I don't even know what's going to happen in the end.
I think the way, just one last, when you said about his visual thing, the way that Denis Villeneuve shoots machinery and like
architecture too.
And just like the urban environment, the physicality of it, so the tactility of it. And that point I said in the film when I said I think it's like trying to build a new visual mythology. Now I don't really know what that sentence means, but it sounds correct, because what I mean when I was watching it, I was like, the images and the settings and the design of this. I mean, we've all seen science fiction films before, but this feels very unique to this story, and I'm really appreciating it.
I've not seen anything like that before.
It reminded me of like when it must have been like when people watched Alien for the first time, and they were like, "Oh, this isn't Star Wars. This is very specific to it." And Blade Runner as well. Sure. It's like you've given me a clear vision here. So
I mean, like Blade Runner. How many people have based their interpretation of science fiction off what Blade Runner said? Like even Star Wars with Coruscant went to copy what Blade Runner did with the megacity. But I genuinely believe that Dune could easily be a footprint for what lots of other people and writers base their science fiction off of.
So I'm going to hand over now to George and James in 2 years' time. So over to you guys. Let us know what you think.
What do you think we look like? Jesus Christ.
We look like Stellan Skarsgård. If we keep eating the way we do now, we're going to look like Stellan Skarsgård in June.